Hello, welcome back to another video tutorial here at GeekatPlay Studios. My name is Gary Miller. We're finishing up our bamboo tutorial here in Photoshop, and this is the one of the textures that I created here in Photoshop for the bamboo pieces. And here is the same one, but I just adjusted the hue and the saturation of it. And to arrive at this, in my opinion, fairly realistic look, all I did is Google bamboo and looked at lots of different images of what bamboo looks like. And this is the effect that I wanted to achieve, something that had an aged look to it. In addition to that, I wanted this white area here at where these joints are, where the pieces of bamboo grow, because I noticed on older looking bamboo it had these white bleached out looking areas. So this is what we're going to recreate here today, and we're going to start with the end pieces first. So create a new layer above that, and I want to find a washed out, sort of desaturated yellow orangey color, about like that, and Alt Delete to fill that in. Let's create a new layer above that, return our foreground and background colors to their default, come over here to white, Alt Delete to fill that in with white, filter, noise, add noise, and I want Gaussian and monochromatic. I want a level of about 50 or so. That looks good. And come down here to color burn, and let's save that, save as, and I'll just save it right over the old one. Hit OK. And no, I don't want to save that. Now we're in our bamboo one. First thing I want to do on this is come down here to image size. I want to, let's change this to 300 and make this 3000 dpi, 3000 pixels. I want this to be large, because when we're creating it, starting with a large image or a large palette, it allows us to add lots of extra detail. Once we're done, now because it's a large image, it will be a fairly large file size. It'll be about 3 megabytes as a JPEG, but we can always reduce it in size and still retain a lot of that detail, as opposed to trying to create this in a small file size. You just can't get the detail. So that's why I'm starting off with a large size. First thing I want to do, create a new layer, and I'm going to come up here to my rectangular marquee tool, and I'm just going to create a selection a little over half the size of this. Come over here to my paintbrush tool, click on my paintbrushes, and I want to choose one of these kind of messy faux brushes. I forget what it is, if there's an actual name to it other than 24. I want to click on Shape Dynamics. I want the size jitter to be about 80 or so. Angle jitter, roundness, minimum roundness, scattering. I want a little bit of scattering. Now the main thing I want is color dynamics. I want color dynamics, and these are the settings I'm going to use for it. Let's hide my brushes. Now I need to set up my colors. I'm going to first start off by creating a green colored bamboo. So let's pick our green, and that looks to be about a good bamboo color. And now let's change to our background, and we'll find another green color to go with this. There we are. Now, depending upon which of your color swatches is in front of the other, depends upon the majority of the color that will be painted on here. I'll give you a quick demonstration. paint on, let me increase my opacity, undo that. Look at this, and now we'll change it, and now look at that. Well, I want this look. I don't want that look, so I want to change the colors back. And now all I'm going to do is just fill this in with color, and I'll be right back. I filled in this layer with a brush that's size of 600. I'm going to reduce my brush size and do this all over again because it'll give me more detail. And I will be right back. Okay, I've got a lot of irregularity in this, and that's fine. So let's come up here to Filter, Blur. Let's add a Gaussian blur to this. So about 50 looks good, 45 or so. And now after that, we're going to come here to Motion Blur, and I want to apply a vertical blur to this and probably go all the way, yeah, we're going to go all the way up to 999 or 998, wherever it stops. And that looks good. And Control D to deselect that. Now here's why I created it much larger than I needed to, because now as we bring it in, notice that it creates more of a striped look. And we'll bring it to about right there. And I think maybe I'll duplicate it to come all the way to the end. I'll duplicate because I added the blur to it. I should have checked this little thing here, this little box, lock transparent pixels. I forgot to, and so it pulls away from the sides a little bit. So I'll just create several duplicates and make it all full. Okay, let's come over here and make sure we get this lined up. It can bleed over, but I want to try to get it as close as possible to the edge of my UV map. There we are. The top and the bottom, it doesn't matter. I'm not worried about that, but the left and the right is what I'm focused on. Okay, on top of that, let's create a new layer. And let's set our colors to their default. And I want white as the foreground, so Alt-Delete to fill that in. Come up here to Noise, add noise, and we'll use that same amount. And come up here to Filter, Blur, Motion Blur, and I'm going to blur it in until I get a uniform look. And that looks good. Now, we always get this issue of the top and the bottom looking pretty poor, so I'll just resolve that by stretching it outside of my image. Click OK, and now I'll just use my crop tool and crop it down. And let's bring up our levels adjustment, Control L, and I'll make this a little bit darker, a little bit wider, bring in some more of that, bring in a little bit more detail. There we are. And come up here to Filter, Stylize, and we're going to emboss this. You know what, let me zoom out, zoom in and show you the effect that the embossing does, and it creates a good wood grain look, and that looks good. So let's zoom back out, and we'll probably want either overlay, let's zoom in here, overlay or soft light. Let's see which. I think we'll go with overlay. It's a little too harsh, but we'll fix that. And again, to add a little bit more grain, we can bring this in, and that's probably a little too much. That looks good there. Let's zoom in and see if it's a little bit much. We can reduce the opacity of it. Let's zoom out. 100%, 70. Oh, I think I'll go with about 70. Okay, now we got to create our, oops. We need to stretch this out a little bit more. wasn't quite at the edge of our UV map. There we are. Click OK to that. Alright, now we need to create those brown bands. So what I'm going to do is, I'll just turn this off. Create a new layer above it. And let's use our rectangular marquee tool. I'm going to create this a little bit larger than the actual lines themselves. And now let's choose some colors. Those are awfully similar. There we are. Use my paintbrush again, and we'll paint this in. These will be these dark brown bands. Now what I want to do is lock my transparent pixels this time. Come up here to Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur, and probably not that much. There we go. And let's see what happens if we put a motion blur on this. No, I think we'll forget about the motion blur. Okay, let's re-enable. Let's Control D to deselect. Now let's move this down so it covers our little pieces here of our joint. And I think I want this to be a little bit more brown, so let's come over here to Adjustments, Hue Saturation, and let's move the hue slider down just a little bit. And if you want to set your adjustments here, just hold down Alt and notice this turns to reset. Just click it and it comes back to normal, its default settings. And let's reduce the saturation a little bit. There we are. Okay, I like that. Now what I want to do is, come on, there we are. Okay. Now what I want to do is I'm just going to grab my eraser tool and just feather the edge. You know what I'm going to do? Let's drag this up a little bit. It'll be easier for me. I'm just going to erase the top part of it just a little bit. And I'm going to hold down Shift so I can draw a nice straight line across it. There we are. And come out over here, hold down Shift. No, too much. Hold down Shift, drag across. Now even though I'm going up, it's not erasing. It's only erasing horizontally, which is what I want. Okay. Hold down Shift and I'll just drag this down. And take this top piece. And it has that nice feathered edge because of the eraser. And let's move this up using the arrow keys. There we go. Okay, now I suppose we could bring this in. Doesn't matter, it extends out beyond our UV map anyway, but we'll just make it look neat and tidy. There we are. And now let me bring this in the center. I'm going to come over here, grab my burn tool, and with a soft brush and a fairly small brush, I'm just going to hold down my Shift button and just draw. Oop, I think I want it a little bit larger than that. Let's see. There we are. Okay, I think I'll go with one smaller. I'm going to put it over here, hold down Shift, and just draw straight across. Create a nice dark inner band. I will duplicate that layer. Hold down Shift. Drag it up here. Let me hide my green. Then move that into place. Come back down to this one. Let's copy that one. Hold down Shift and drag it down here. There we are. I do need to come back up to this top one. Oops. I'll have to use my arrow keys. There we are. And our texture on top of everything. Okay, it's coming along. Now the one last thing we need to do is come down here. I'm going to select my green texture and I want to create a new layer above that because that little white bleached area, I don't want it to be on these brown bands. So I'm going to use a Wacom tablet for this, but you don't need to have a Wacom tablet. You can use your mouse and achieve the same results, although it will take a little bit longer. Okay, I'm going to use the same paintbrush that I used in the other painting that I've done. I'm going to reset my colors back to their default white, black and white, but I want white as my foreground color. And let's bring the opacity down to about 25%. And I'm just going to, let me hide these bands, reduce the opacity of my green so I can see my UV map underneath. Okay. Okay, all I'm going to do is just, and this does not need to be precise in any way, shape, or form. Actually, you know what, I'm going to delete that layer. What I want to do is I want to do it on the center one. So create a new layer, use my paintbrush, and I'm just going to draw across it to fill in this area here, like that. I'm going to re-enable now the entire visibility of this green layer. And all I'm going to do now is just do some messy doodling. And the reason why I reduce the opacity down is because areas that I draw over, they'll be a little bit darker. So add more randomness to this. Alright, let's come over here to blur and motion blur, and let's apply a good amount of blur to this. Hit OK. Reduce the visibility or the opacity of it. Okay, let's see, where is it? There it is. I'm going to hold down Shift and Alt And now I'm just going to scale this down. That looks good. And just adjust this, move it down until it's over the center UVs. Let's enable our brown bands. Okay, I like that. Let's call this, just white. Let's create a new copy of that. Hold down Shift, and I'm just going to drag it up here. A copy of that one, and drag it down here. I think on this one I'm going to come over here to transform and hit horizontal, move it over. There we are. Let's back up and take a look at our work so far. I think that looks pretty good. Merge those white layers together, and now we'll just bring their opacity down a little bit. There we go. Okay, I'm going to take all of these layers, not the texture one, not the one that we embossed. I'm going to take all of these and merge them together. I will create a duplicate of it. Come over here to Edit, Transform, flip it horizontal. Now the two are the same layers, but one of them is on top of the other. And we're at the end of this tutorial. I will go into finishing up on a second tutorial and explaining why I just did what I did by duplicating and transforming this layer. So that's it for this tutorial. Thanks for watching here at GeekatPlay Studios. My name is Gary Miller. Have a good day.